Resident doctors, formerly known as junior doctors, have voted to go on strike again in England. So let's have a look at some of the facts here. The British Medical Association wants doctors' salaries to be worth the same amount they were in 2008 before high inflation hit. Last year, Labour put an end to the last round of strikes by giving doctors a 22% pay increase. OK, that's the last big settlement. In May this year, they fell out again because they said you got 5.4%. That's the offer. The BMA says that's not enough. They want, ready, here it comes, 29%, not 5.4. The Health Secretary says more pay rises are off the table. The government says the average resident doctor's basic pay is expected to reach about £54,300 over the next year. So we are going to talk now to Ross Nevo, the co-chair of the Resident Doctor Committee at the BMA. And we're listening carefully because I'm just trying to work out why you would want more.
Well, I think that's a very good question, and the answer to that is that we have now done a ballot for industrial action, and it has been successful. So the membership, we asked them a question: is this year's pay uplift sufficient progress to restoring our pay back to 2008 levels? And the answer to that was no. They feel that they'd
always say, I mean, everyone will say no when they're asked that question, won't they? Then.
So doctors don't want to strike, but doctors want to treat their patients. But we've been put in a situation where, compared to international comparators, we're paid maybe half or a third of what they are, where there's better weather and better working conditions.
And why did you become a doctor?
I became a doctor because I think it's an incredibly interesting career. I think I really enjoy helping patients.
Is that how you categorise it? An interesting career? Can I take you on over the fatuous figures you guys, your union completely puts out? You say you've taken a 23% drop in salary since 2008. You know very well that the Institute of Fiscal Studies has completely debunked those figures, and they've said that you have calculated them on the retail price index instead of the consumer price index, which gives an entirely different figure.
Let him answer.
So you are misleading people.
Let him answer.
I don't think we're misleading people at all.
Yes,
so
you are.
Our student loans, which resident doctors
Nothing to
graduate...
do with anything.
It actually is. Let me explain why. So resident doctors graduate from medical school with about £100,000 of debt.
Yep.
And the interest rate is on that student debt is calculated
That's
with
not
RPI.
her point.
So
not
why,
my point.
so why is
I'm asking
RPI
you why
a
you are
reasonable
pumping
figure
out
for our
fake,
student loans, but not for our pay
You talking over me
increases?
is not going to satisfy the public. I've asked you why your union, your very militant union, your very greedy union, are pumping out fake figures that the Institute of Fiscal Studies has completely debunked. Said you've calculated them on the wrong price index. Why are you doing that? Because you're trying to convince people you're all poor.
Well, let him answer.
So my question to you would be, why is RPI a suitable figure of inflation for the student loans but not for pay?
Ask the Institute of Fiscal Studies, who know more about figures than you or I do, and especially
so you don't have an answer.
More than
and the reason is
union.
because
you've obviously done it because you've chosen a figure that makes the difference look greater. I mean, that's, you can be honest about that.
I don't think so at all. So housing prices have skyrocketed. Student debt is massive.
For everyone,
Doctors
sir.
have options to go to other
everyone.
countries
Right.
and
You
seek
guys
better
are-
opportunities.
Wait a
And
second, Carole.
a doctor is starting on £17 an hour, and all we're asking for is them
You
to
get
go
that
to
for about 3 months.
£23 an hour.
Stop doing this.
Now,
All this nonsense about you earn the same as a barista. In your third year, you guys are earning nearly 60 grand. Let me tell you, and you know these figures as well as I do, when you work more than 37 and a half hours a week, you get time and a half. You get a special overtime allowance. You get time for working weekends. You can double whatever salary you're on with all of those payments. And I've checked all of these figures, and you can write them down as much as you like, but that is the fact of the matter.
Again,
you are one
Ross
of the highly...
Ross, go on.
Most highly paid public servants in this country.
So it's a shame. I don't know where you check these figures, but they're not quite accurate.
Oh, I
so
just make them
don't-
up.
Oh, that's a shame. So time and a half is inaccurate. We get about 30% extra on the night shifts that we have to endure.
Let him answer, Carole.
RPI is a suitable figure to use because it is used on the things that we have to pay for, on the inflation, on our student loans. And we're asking for doctors starting on £17 an hour to be instead paid £23 an hour.
For about 3 months.
Even if that happened, they would still be paid less than physicians associates
Ross,
who are their assistants.
Why did you put out this barista figure saying that you're paid the same as a barista when it's just not an accurate comparison?
So that's not something that we put out for a few years now. So when we were paid at the start of the campaign,
it wasn't accurate.
At the start of the campaign, when doctors were paid £14 an hour when they started, that was an accurate figure. We're not saying that anymore
That's not, but
because
that's,
it's no longer
that's
true
not
because
to
progress
compare
has been
doctors
made.
to baristas. Baristas do not have final salary pensions. They don't have the security. They don't have the pay scale. It's just a completely wrong comparison.
And we don't have final salary pensions
again
either.
and again and again. So why would we trust your figures now?
So we don't have final salary figures, pensions either. So it is now an
You
average
you
salary
get double
figure.
the pension of
and
anyone
doctors are now
else from the
stuck
government.
at middle point 3 for many years because there's been a failure in workforce planning for a long time.
Means that just quiet. Let me bring in Peter. You got some sympathy with them here,
No,
Peter?
I just want to ask one big question is it all young doctors? Because I know a lot of people in the medical profession, the older doctors are appalled at striking. They're appalled at the idea of striking. There are ways round it. You could mess with the paperwork, death duties, things like this. The public, I don't think the public are going to, sadly, support, because I love what you all do, but I don't think the public are going to support you now because financially they're all struggling, everyone's struggling, and they see doctors earning more money. But what I think is that the older doctors who went in it because they wanted to save lives.
Please let Ross answer.
So do we. I came into this profession to save lives. I do think it's an interesting career. I think there are many parts of it that I love.
Why have you taken industrial action 11 times in the past few years?
So, because doctors are leaving, because the situation is no longer tenable.
These older doctors, to countries like Australia, where you earn much more money.
Older doctors may. Do you mind if I answer?
Yeah, go on. Let him answer.
Question. Carole. So, older doctors, they may be appalled by the idea of striking. They exist in a period before this massive pay erosion. We're now in a situation where, if people can't get into training, their options are stay here where they're treated badly, paid badly, or go to somewhere like Australia where they're paid 2-3 times and be treated much better.
It has a private health system in Australia.
Okay.
Can I just ask him this? This is really important because
hang on, Ross. Sorry, don't just talk over her. Go on.
One of your members from your union said recently that you were all very excited about going on strike again. That was one of your members. Now, what, you're excited about abandoning your patients? You're excited about terrifying people?
I mean, we don't know who said that.
It was a member of his union.
Well, so you say.
If you give me enough time, I can find it because I have it in my notes.
That was actually me. And
it was you.
And I said that because doctors have the energy and they're energised and they want to go out and they want to fight for improving paying conditions, and that's really important to them.
You're
because they want
about terrifying sick people.
They want the opportunity to improve paying conditions here, so they can stay here and treat patients here rather than being
this is greed. You got it. You got a
22%.
Stop talking.
I'll let you speak.
This is a debate, okay? You got a 22% pay rise last year. You've just been given 5.4%, and you still want another 29%. That is unadulterated.
But that's not a question, Carole. That's just a statement.
But it's unadulterated.
The other thing
let me just Ross. You've come into. I know you won't take calls for some reason. I don't understand that.
Because you probably can't answer the question.
Well, you won't take phone calls from the public. Is that right?
From my media team. But
I don't know what the
Why is that?
Got to do with
Why is that? Are you frightened of the public?
I'm not frightened at all.
Well, you're letting them down. Are you frightened to hear what they might have to say to you? Why don't you take some calls? Forget your PR people.
Do you mind if I address your 5.4 figure? So
no. Sorry, we've moved on from that. I'm sorry, we haven't got time for that.
Okay, I see.
Well, no, because we've had a long time on the numbers. I just want to make the broader point here. As you can hear, both of them are seriously concerned about this strike action. There will be a lot of people among the public who don't like this at all.
And there doesn't need to be a single day of action. And
if they give you the money.
But all they need to do is give a credible offer that can take us to restore a membership's faith that this is a journey to pay restoration.
But that's how all strikes work, right? That you say, we're going to go on strike unless you pay us.
Because when last year when Wes Streeting gave us that deal, it was under the provision that it was the start of a journey to restoring our pay. And if you start a journey and stop at the first lay-by, then that's not a negotiation.
When did the pay erosion start? Did you say 2008?
2008.
And when did you become a doctor?
I became a doctor in 2021.
So how can you complain about pay erosion when you weren't even a doctor?
Because I experienced pay erosion throughout medical school.
No, you didn't.
I was watching.
You joined 13 years after it started.
I was watching the pay that I was expecting to start decrease over time.
No, you joined after the pay had been eroded. Why did you join if it was too low? You didn't suffer from pay erosion.
I did, because erosion has continued
in 2008 you were not a doctor.
Pay has continued to erode since that time. It's only since...
So why don't you just ask for the erosion that you've suffered since 2021?
Doctors are still paid less than they were before COVID.
I don't
No,
get
they are.
it.
Hang on. You
This is
mentioned
just tosh.
COVID.
In real
You mentioned
terms.
COVID. The backlash of another strike. We have never got over COVID, and now there are going to be people dying because doctors go on
And they
strike.
will die.
There is.
Well,
And do you
they're
care
allowed
about
to strike.
that?
Let's just be clear.
We've been
For
very- we've kept
balance,
all the
they're
strikes
allowed
safe.
to
If you
strike.
cared about... You know what? It should be illegal for doctors to strike.
Well, hang on.
The
They're
same way-
allowed to strike. They're allowed to
You
strike.
shouldn't be allowed to strike because you're putting people, willfully putting people's lives in danger. And the ones that you're not putting in danger, you're causing fear, you're causing terror, you're causing pain, you're causing worry and anxiety with sick people, some of the most vulnerable people in society who you took an oath to protect.
Yeah. But hang on.
If you
go
ban
on.
the canary
Let
in
him
the
have
coal
the last
mine,
word here.
if you ban the canary in the coal mine, you can't alert people to danger. It's really important because at the moment, doctors are leaving the country. It costs £250,000 to train a doctor in England, and that investment is walking out of the door because this government is
Going
not
to
taking.
Let him have the last word,
Because the
Carole.
government is not taking our pay erosion seriously. Like, if people have options to go elsewhere where they're treated better, paid better, and the weather's better, then why wouldn't they? We need to give
right.
these,
Weather's
these
better for
doctors.
you.
We need
Lovely.
to give these doctors a
Lovely.
reason to
Thank
stay in
you.
the NHS.
So you
to
care
treat the
about people's
patients
health, but the
that we
weather's
deeply,
better in
deeply
Australia.
care about.
Okay, thank
The
you very much.
weather's better in
Normally, we
Australia.
have never allowed a guest on before to say, I'm not taking calls from the public on this show.
Yeah, it's
I've
important.
done it. We've done it today because I didn't know you'd... Sorry?
We can take calls, it's fine.
It's too late because we've got to thank you and let you go. But we don't allow that normally.
It's
So
cowardice.
and you really need to be accountable to callers who will be very worried. Thank you very much. After the break, we're taking your calls when Ross has gone on whether doctors are right to strike over pay. OK, Pete and Carole are with us this morning. You were having a word as he was leaving.
Well, he wouldn't go. He's trying to convince me. I just told him he's never going to convince me that, a doctor should walk out on a sick person or a dying person. It's appalling.
Well, OK, but they're legally allowed to, and we have to
they
put
shouldn't
both.
be.
We try to put both sides here. It's not the easiest one to do that on. It looks like they are going to go on strike. I don't think it's just a threat. They voted for it. Gary in Kent, do you think the doctors are within their rights to strike again?
Good morning, everybody. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually totally agree with Carole.
Hey,
The woman
always
really
a
has.
first.
The woman really, sorry, Carole, that she really talks sense today. Doctors are leaving, he said, to go to Australia. That's a private health system out in Australia. At the end of the day, I don't think they've got any duty of care to the patients here, none whatsoever. I've agreed with strikes before from them, but I think they're just taking it far too far now.
They got a big jump under the Tory, or it was basically settled by Labour. The Tories settled it stage one, and then Labour paid up. And I think that Starmer and co did not believe they would go again.
It is their fault. It's Starmer and West Ritting's fault, because what they should have done was put a proviso into the contract that they signed last year and said, you can't come back next year for another big lump. And they didn't do
I'm
that.
sorry.
So it's his own
Don't
fault.
go, Gary.
To me, if you want to see health dedication from medics and that, you've only got to look to Gaza. The dedication that those people are showing to those people out there. These people, your gentleman just said that they're leaving it for better pay, for better this, for better that. Where's the dedication?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't he go to Gaza and work and show the dedication?
And Gary, did you
Don't
hear
go
him?
to Australia.
He said doctors are going to Australia because the weather's nice. There's not much of a vacation there.
How on earth did you give him permission to come on the programme?
Well, no, hang on. We've got to hear both sides here. So, it's very difficult because he's batting quite a lonely wicket, that gentleman, and I think actually being very, very young doesn't help either. Thank you, Gary. Marion in Hampshire, do you think the doctors can go on strike? Should go on strike?
Yes, I do.
Oh, right. Tell us why.
Because they have the right to strike the same as anyone else. If you had someone else in a different profession on your programme and they were going to strike, you wouldn't have all this shouting and interrupting from your panel that the young doctor got. And you asked him not to interrupt the lady on your panel, but you didn't ask your panel not to interrupt him.
That is absolutely not true.
Jeremy told
I
him.
had to keep asking Carole to stop and let him answer.
Do you know, Marion,
Marion, have you got doctors in your family? Are you speaking from a family connection?
I do not have doctors in my family, never have. And I would love doctors in my family, but I don't. And I do believe that this young doctor and to dwell on the point that he said he wanted to go because of the weather. It's ridiculous. He did say it, and I understand that he truly did say it. But you're picking on such stupid things.
Marion, that was at the end.
And don't interrupt.
I will interrupt. Because you're talking. That was at the end of a very long conversation where he was allowed to put his points across very well. He got lots of time. But I find it astonishing that you think it's okay for doctors to walk out on sick and dying people. Doctors are some of the best paid public servants in this country. And you if it was one of your relatives, someone you loved, who was left when they were sick, you wouldn't like it.
Marion.
I think you're pointing again and shouting
yes,
again.
It doesn't
matter. Let us do as she wishes. Just answer the substance.
I will answer the substance. I truly believe that doctors, as in any other profession, have the right to strike. If it was a different profession, you wouldn't be shouting and pointing at him.
Okay.
Well, we would actually.
Having the right to strike, and by the way, that's the argument I tried, because that's the balancing thought here is if they got a right to strike, they can strike. Okay, but it doesn't mean they're right. They can have the right to strike, but it may not be right to strike. Marion.
Well, I truly believe it is.
Okay. Thank you so much. Go on.
Can I ask Marion, as we went through that dreadful, dreadful pandemic, they're trying to catch up still on operations. People died through cancer, through so many illnesses. Isn't this going to make it an absolute abomination of people left dying again because we can't catch up with what's happening?
Well, just pay them the extra money then.
Where's the money come from?
Instead of them going abroad for extra money, keep them here.
But where's that going to come from, Marion?
Well, maybe you make savings in other bits of the
NHS is skint.
Yeah. Thanks, Marion, very much indeed. Andy in Plymouth, hi. Do you think the doctors are right to go on strike?
No, absolutely not. I totally agree with Carole. I don't always agree with you, Carole, got to be honest, but I do agree with you on this. 22% last year and 5.4% this year. If you're passionate about your job and you go into healthcare to look after people, the money, I know money pays the bills at the end of the day, but what they're asking for is absolutely ridiculous, and the BMA should be ashamed, balloting members. They were balloting members before they even knew what the pay rise rates was going to be. And you'll see that it's all youngsters as well that are always the ones that are leading this strike all the time. It's like a good excuse not to go to work. Yeah. Absolutely appalling.
I'm glad you said about the youngsters, because I do know a lot of people in the medical profession, and they're sad because they went in to save lives and to help people, and they would never consider striking.
OK, Andy, thank you. Thanks for all your calls on this. Later, we'll be asking whether dogs should be banned from beaches in summer. After the break, we'll debate whether Donald Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize.